Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to Life from Mars. It's your girl Marissa. What is up? Today I am back with some more spooky content. Who was surprised? And I am actually going to be doing part 2 of the creepiest stories I have ever heard. Yes, so if you guys have not already watched part 1 of this video, I will put the link up above so you guys can click on it. I would highly recommend that you check out that video before you watch this one. You don't really have to, but just to give you a little more context as to the wider story that we are talking about. Just for a quick review for those of you guys who did watch the last video, the stories that I'm going to be sharing with you all are actually from a Reddit thread entitled, "I am a search and rescue officer with the U.S. Forest Service and I have some stories to tell." Yes, so this guy, he's a search and rescue officer for the U.S. Forest Service, like he just said. And so, yeah, he goes and he helps find missing people that go missing in the wilderness, in the forests, in the national parks, etc. So he has some absolutely crazy stories to tell. I'm just going to stop talking, and I'm sure you guys are anxiously waiting to hear the next set of stories, so I'm just going to go right into it. Okay, guys, so the first part of this post is just kind of a couple of bullet points, and I'm just going to summarize them because they're not actually stories, but it is relevant to the overall story, so I'm just gonna give you guys a kind of synopsis. So the first bullet point, he talks about how there's been, quote, "an overwhelming amount of people mentioning the similarities between some of my stories and those of David Paulides." Basically, he goes on to explain that yes, this is true and that he can validate a lot of the things that David Paulides says. So who is David Paulides? In the most summed up way I can possibly say, he actually used to be a detective and now he is an author, and he is famous for writing a book series called The Missing 411. So The Missing 411 basically details exactly what this guy is talking about, and it is an entire book series that goes super into depth about specific cases of missing people, not just like on a random Reddit post, but actually super real, proven, you know, detective found information. I don't know, I probably could have said that way better, but you know, it's legit information, it's factual, it's not fake. So if you want to discredit the Reddit post, just know that there is literally an entire book series pretty much talking about this exact same phenomena that has been extremely validated. So if you're questioning any of the validity of any of these stories, just know that, okay? Second, there was a lot of feedback about the stairs. So I'll touch on that briefly here, and I'll also include a story. They come in a variety of shapes, sizes, styles, and conditions. Some are pretty dilapidated, just ruins, but others are brand new. I saw one set that looked like they came from a lighthouse. They were metal and spiral, almost old-fashioned. The stairs don't go up infinitely or farther than I can see, but some sets are taller than others. Like I said before, just imagine the stairs in your house as if someone had cut and pasted them in the middle of nowhere. I don't have any pictures. It's never really occurred to me to try after the first time, and I don't really feel like risking my job over it. I'll try again in the future, but I really can't promise anything. Alright guys, so that's a little information about the stairs. If you don't remember, that was the last story from the last video, so just a little more detail there, but now let's just get into all the creepy stories. Okay, as far as missing persons go, I'd say about half the calls I get are related to that. The others are rescue calls. People who fall down cliffs and hurt themselves, get injured by fire. You wouldn't believe how often this happens, mostly drunk kids. Get bitten or stung by animals or insects. We're a tight team, and we have veterans who are excellent at finding signs of lost people. That's what makes these cases where we never find any trace of them so frustrating. One in particular was upsetting for all of us because we did find a trace of them, but it just led to more questions than answers. An older man had been hiking alone on a well-established trail, but his wife called to say that he hadn't come home when he should have. Apparently, he had a history of seizures, and she was worried that he hadn't taken his medication and had suffered one on the trail. Before you ask, I have no idea why he thought it was okay to go out alone or why she didn't go out with him. I don't ask about that kind of thing because past a certain point, it really doesn't matter. Someone is missing and it's my job to find them. We went out in a standard search formation, and it wasn't long before one of our vets found signs that the guy had gone off the trail. We grouped up and followed him, spreading out in a fan to make sure we covered as much ground as possible. Suddenly, a call comes over the radio telling us to head back to the vet's location, and we come right away because this usually means the missing person is injured and we need a full team to help them out to safety. We meet back up, and the vet is just standing at the base of a tree with his hands on the side of his head. I asked my buddy what's going on, and he points into the branches of this tree. I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing, but there's a walking stick dangling from a branch at least 30 feet off the ground. Oh my god! The little strap thing on the handle has been looped around the branch, and it's just hanging there. There's no way the guy could have tossed it up that far, and we don't see any other signs that he's still in the area. We call up into the tree, but it's obvious no one's in it. We're all just sort of left scratching our heads. We keep searching for the guy, but we never find him. We even bring our canines out, but they lose his scent long before this tree. Eventually, the search is called off because there were other calls to attend to, and past a certain point, there's not much we can do. The guy's wife has called us every day for months, asking if we've found her husband, and it was heartbreaking to hear her get more and more hopeless each time. I'm not sure why this call in particular was so upsetting, but I think it was just the sheer improbability of it. That and the questions that were raised. How the hell had this guy's cane ended up there? Did someone kill him and toss that up there as some weird trophy? We did our best to find him, but it was almost like a taunt. We still talk about that one from time to time. Whew! Alright, that's rough from a lot of angles. Obviously, that's extremely tragic, you know what I mean? All of these stories are obviously tragic, but I mean, you know, it's just also mind-blowing because, like he said, there's just so many questions, and I don't know how to explain that, you know? Like, how would this older man toss his cane and literally perfectly wrap it around a branch of a tree? That just seems sketchy to me, and obviously, do I have an explanation? Absolutely not. Alright, this is the next story. Missing kids are the most heartbreaking. Doesn't matter what circumstances they go missing under, it's never easy, and we always dread finding ones that are deceased. It's not common, but it does happen. David Paulides talks a lot about kids search and rescue teams finds in places they shouldn't be or couldn't be. I can honestly say I've heard about this kind of thing happening more than I've seen it, but I'll share one of the ones that I think about a lot that I witnessed personally. A mother and her 3 kids were out for a picnic in an area of the park that has a small lake. One is 6, one is 5, and the other is about 3. She's watching them all really closely, and according to her, she never really lets them out of her sight at any time. She never saw anyone else in the park either, which is important. She packs their stuff up and they start to head back to the parking area. Now, this lake is only about 2 miles into the woods, and it's on a very clearly established trail. It's almost impossible to get lost from the parking area to it, unless you're deliberately going off the path like an imbecile. Her kids are walking in front of her when she hears what sounds like someone coming up the path behind her. She turns around, and in the 4 or so seconds she's not looking, her 5-year-old son vanishes. She's figured he stepped off the trail to pee or something, and she asks her other 2 where he went. They both tell her that, quote, a big man with a scary face came out of the woods next to them, took the kid's hand, and led him into the trees. Whew! The 2 kids don't seem upset. In fact, she says later that they sort of seem like they've been drugged. They're sort of spacey and fuzzy. Oh my god. Guys, the lady turned around for 4 seconds. In 4 seconds, one son goes missing and then her other 2 kids are drugged? What human could even accomplish that fast? You know that's not a human. So of course she freaks out, starts looking frantically in the area for her kid. She's screaming his name, and she says at one point she thinks she heard him answer her. Now obviously she can't go running blindly into the woods. She's got the other 2 kids, so she calls the police and they send us out immediately. We respond and we search the area for him. Over the course of the search, we spend miles. We never find a single trace of the kid. Canines can't pick up any scent. We don't have any clothing or broken bushes or literally anything that could signify a child being there. Of course there's suspicion about the mother for a while, but it's pretty clear that she's completely destroyed by the whole thing. We looked for the kid for weeks with a lot of volunteer help, but eventually the search peters out and we have to move on. The volunteers keep searching though, and one day we get a call on the radio letting us know that a body has been found and needs to be recovered. They tell us the location and none of us can believe it. We figure it has to be a different kid. But we go out there about 15 miles from the site where he vanished, and sure enough, we find the body of the kid we've been looking for. I have been trying to figure out how this kid got to where he did ever since we found him, and I've never come up with an answer. A volunteer just happened to be in the area because he figured he might as well look in places no one else would think to look on the off chance the body had been dumped. He comes to the base of a tall, rocky slope, and halfway up, he sees something. He looks through his binoculars, and sure enough, it's the body of the little boy, stuffed in a little opening in the rock. He recognizes the color of the kid's shirt, so he knows right away that it's the missing boy. That's when he calls it in and we're dispatched. It took us almost an hour and a half to get his body down, and none of us could believe what we were seeing. Not only was the kid 15 miles from where he'd started, there was no possible way he could have gotten up there on his own. This slope is treacherous, and it's hard even for us with climbing gear. A 5-year-old boy had no way of getting up there. Of that, I'm certain. Not only that, but the kid doesn't have a scratch on him. His shoes are gone, but his feet aren't damaged or dirty. So it wasn't as if an animal dragged him up there. And from what we can tell, he hasn't been dead that long. He'd been out there for over a month at that point, and it looked like he'd only been dead for at most a day or two. The whole thing was unbelievably strange and was one of the most disconcerting calls I've ever been on. We found out later that the coroner determined the kid had died from exposure. He'd frozen to death, probably late at night, 2 days before we found him. There was no suspects and no answers. To date, it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Guys, that is just an absolutely insane story. I don't know what to make of that. How would a 5-year-old child travel 15 miles by himself and somehow survive out in the wilderness only to die of exposure on a random night? How did he not die of exposure the first night or the first week? Obviously, something was taking care of him, or he was in some place where he was being looked over. I mean, I guess that's the only logical explanation I can think of, guys. The crazy thing about this phenomena is that there literally is not even a real theory. All of the stories are so different and just so strange that there doesn't even seem to be one obvious answer. You know, you could say maybe the kid was abducted by aliens, you know, and then just returned, and they just put him in this random little rock in the middle of a cliff and just let him freeze to death, you know. But honestly, that logic does not apply to all of the stories, so I just don't know. I'm just as confused as him and just as confused as you know. So, alright guys, next story. One of my first jobs as a trainee was a search op for a 4-year-old kid that had gotten separated from his mom. This was one of those cases where we knew we were going to find him because the dogs were on a strong scent trail and we saw clear signs that he was in the area. We ended up finding him in a berry patch about half a mile from where he'd been last seen. Kid wasn't even aware that he'd wandered that far. One of the vets brought him back, which I was glad for because I'm not really good with kids, and I find it hard to talk to them and keep them company. As my trainer and I are headed back, she decides to take me on a detour to show me one of the hot spots where we tend to find missing people. It's a natural dip in the land near a popular trail, and people will usually move downhill because it's easier. We hike out there, it's a few miles away, and we get there in about an hour or so. As we're walking around the area and she's pointing out places she's found people in the past, I see something in the distance. Now, the area we're in is about 8 miles from the main parking area, though there's back roads you can take to get closer if you don't want to hike that far. But we're on state protected land, which means there cannot be any kind of commercial or residential development out here. The most you'll see is a fire tower or a makeshift shelter that homeless people think that they can get away with building. But I can see from here that whatever this thing is has straight edges. And if there's one thing you learn quickly, it's that nature rarely makes straight lines. I point it out, but she doesn't say anything. She just hangs back and lets me wander over and check it out. I get within about 20 feet of it, and all the hair on the back of my neck stands up. It's a staircase in the middle of the woods. In the proper context, it would literally be the most benign thing ever. It's just a normal staircase with beige carpet and about 10 steps tall. But instead of being in a house where it obviously should be, it's out here in the middle of the woods. The sides aren't carpeted and I can see the wood it's made out of. It's almost like a video game glitch where the house has failed to completely load and the stairs are the only thing visible. I stand there and it's like my brain is working overtime to try and make sense of what I'm seeing. Guys, the thing that gets me about these stairs is that they have carpet. What? I don't know, that's just really weird to me. I mean, I guess it's obviously weird in general, but the carpeted thing is just like, just pushes it to that extra level, you know what I mean? My trainer comes up and stands next to me, and she just stands there casually, looking at it as if it's the least interesting thing in the world. I ask her what the this thing is doing here, and she just chuckles. Get used to it, rookie. You're gonna see a lot of them. I start to move closer, but she grabs my arm. Hard. I wouldn't do that, she says. Her voice is casual, but her grip is tight, and I just stand there looking at her. You're gonna see them all the time, but don't go near them. Don't touch them, don't go up them. Just ignore them. I start to ask her about it, but something in the way she's looking at me tells me that it's best if I don't. We end up moving on, and the subject doesn't come up again for the rest of my training. She was right though. I'd say about every 5th call I go on, I end up running across a set of stairs. Sometimes they're relatively close to the path, maybe 2 or 3 miles. Sometimes they're 20, 30 miles out. Literally in the middle of nowhere, and I only find them during the broadest searches or training weekends. They're usually in good condition, but sometimes it looks like they've been out there for miles. All different kinds, all different sizes. The biggest I ever saw looked like they came out of a turn-of-the-century mansion and were at least 10 feet wide, with steps leading up at least 15 or 20 feet. Well, I guess there's some rich, bougie Gatsby ghosts out there in the forest. I've tried talking about it with people, but they just give me the same response my trainer did. It's normal. Don't worry about it. They're not a big deal, but don't go close to them or up them. When trainees ask me about it now, I give them the same response. I don't know what else to tell them. I'm really hoping that someday I get a better answer, but it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, guys, those stairs are just... they're no joke. Now you guys know. If you're ever out there in the forest, maybe camping or whatever, you see a set of stairs, don't even try to play with them, alright? Like, it's not worth the selfie or the joke, you know, just maybe don't risk it. Alright, let's move on to the next story. This is the last big story on this one. A lot of my less outdoorsy friends want to know if I've ever seen the goat man while I've been out on calls. Unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, I've never had anything quite like that happen. I guess the closest was the whole black-eyed man thing, but I didn't see anything. However, there was one call where I had something kind of similar happen, but I'm not sure I'm willing to chalk it up to the goat man. We'd gotten a report that an older woman had fainted along one of the trails and needed assistance getting back down to the main area. We hike up to where she's at, and her husband is just beside himself. He runs, well, I guess more jogs to us, and tells us that he was a little ways off the trail looking at something when his wife started screaming behind him. He runs back to her and she's passed out on the trail. We get her on a backboard, and as we're getting her down to the welcome center, she comes back and starts screaming again. Oh, God. I calm her down and ask her what happened. I can't remember verbatim what she said, but essentially what happened was this. She'd been waiting for her husband when she started hearing this really strange sound. She said it sounded sort of like a cat, but it was somehow off, and she couldn't quite figure out why. She went a little ahead to try to hear it better, and it sounded like it was coming closer. She said the closer she got to it, the more uneasy she was, until finally she figured out what was wrong. I do remember this next part because it was so weird that I don't think I could ever forget it if I tried. Oh God, I don't know if I'm ready to read it. Are you guys ready to hear it? Whew, here we go. Okay. It wasn't a cat. It was a man saying the word meow over and over. Oh God, okay, I got chills. Oh my God, okay. Just
meow, meow,
But it wasn't a man. It couldn't have been, because I've never heard a man make his voice buzz like that. I thought my hearing aid was going out, but it wasn't. I adjusted it and it still sounded all buzzy. It was awful. He was coming closer, but I couldn't see him. And the closer he got, the more scared I was. Yeah, I bet you were, lady. What the hell? And the last thing I remember was a shape coming out of the trees. I guess that's when I fainted. Oh my God, guys. What is that? How does that story relate to any of the other crazy stories? It almost feels like there has to be an infinite amount of paranormal things going on in the forest for all this stuff to even be possible. There's got to be some group work going on between all of the supernatural beings of the forest to make these kind of crazy instances happen. Now, obviously, I'm a little perplexed as to why a guy would be out in the woods chanting meow meow at people, right? So once we get down the mountain, I tell my superior that I'm gonna go search the area to see if I can find anything. He gives me the go-ahead, and I grab a radio and hike back to where she fainted. I don't see anyone, so I keep going for about a mile more, and when I head back, I go off the trail to see if I can figure out where she saw him coming from. It's almost sunset by this point, and I don't have any desire to be out at night alone. So I just sort of write it off and make a mental note to check it out tomorrow. But as I'm headed back, I start to hear something in the distance. I stop and I call out for anyone in the immediate area to identify themselves. The sound didn't come any closer or get louder, but it sounded exactly like a man saying meow meow in this really odd monotone. As comical as it may sound, it was almost like the guy on South Park with the electrolarynx Ned. Okay, I don't watch South Park, but maybe some of you guys will get that reference. Maybe I'll insert a little clip of him talking so we can all understand.
Hello, Mrs. Cartman. How are you today?
So that's what he sounded like. Okay. I cannot believe that that guy also heard that. Okay, I go off the trail in the direction I think it's coming from, but I never seem to get closer. It's almost like it's coming from all directions. Eventually, it just sort of all fades out, and I end up going back to the welcome center. I didn't get any further reports like that, and even though I went back to that area, I never heard that exact sound again. I suppose it could have been some stupid kid out there f***ing with people, but even I have to admit, it was weird. I don't know, guys, like, was it possible that it was a kid? I don't really think so. I don't understand how a person could actually mastermind that without being seen at all or heard. This guy is literally trained to find people, and he could not even find where the sound was coming from. That is what is just so weird to me. Anyway, guys, that is it for part 2. Obviously, like I said in the last video, there's actually 7 parts to this series, so I very well may go through all of them. If you guys stay interested in these, let me know if you want me to make a video on part 3, because I definitely probably will make a video next week. I am actually loving going through these again just because they're so entertaining, right, guys? It keeps you on the edge of your seat and super spooked and not wanting to go outside at all. It's funny because I always want to go camping and stuff, and my friends are like, how could you possibly want to go camping after all of the stuff that you know and all the stuff that happens in the woods? But I'll let you guys in on a little secret. These disappearances, these weird instances, tend to happen in specific places. There's specific parks where it happens more often, where more people go missing, and even specific areas in those parks. And there's also certain parks where there's almost no disappearances, no weird happenings, I guess. So you just kind of gotta know what's up and kind of be on the defense, you know what I mean? I'm not gonna go into the woods alone, and I'm definitely not gonna go up any stairs, so you know, at least I got that covered. But that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big like and comment below letting me know what you thought. If you have any theories on this at all, I would love to hear it, because like I said, I don't really have a definitive theory. One minute I think I kind of know what could be explaining one of the stories, and then I hear another story and it just completely throws that theory off. So let me know what you guys think. I would love to hear it. And of course, please subscribe if you are not already subscribed. I would absolutely love to have you guys as part of my channel. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so there's plenty of new content coming out there for you guys. Anyway, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Hope you're not too creeped out. Hope you're not scared to go up your stairs at home or something, because I promise those are probably normal stairs. You know, they're not in the woods, so I'm sure you're good. I love you guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!